I'm indifferent to it.
That's what I'm saying. Using the tools to arrive at the conclusion and the right answers. So because something exists now, either it didn't exist all the time, or it did. There's only two binary options. They're not third. Either our universe always existed, or it didn't. You can't have a third option here.
Well, there could be one, but we just don't know how to imagine it.
So now you're not using your intellect properly. You're saying there could be other intellectual possibilities, other logical argumentation. You don't even know what these logical possibilities are. Something that you cannot even imagine or think, don't even attempt to describe it because it doesn't even exist. Look, our logic is limited to our language and the vocabulary that we use, right? Isn't it? We construct logical axioms or rules using a human language or mathematical language, whatever you want to call it. If you have an option, say, oh, possibly there's a third option, can you describe it in mathematics and logic? You can't, because it doesn't even exist. So this is not really using your intellect properly. Your intellect properly means the faculty that you have, it only gives us two options. The universe either existed always, or it didn't. Then we can move on, analyzing each option in turn. Because if it didn't always exist, then what it means is at some point this universe was non-existent. Let's take that option first. If it didn't exist, can it bring itself into existence?
I don't know much about the nature of the universe. I can't tell you.
You can't, because it didn't even exist. I assume you use your intellect. You said, yes, I have. So if something didn't even exist, it has no existence. Do you know what it means? It has nothing, zilch of any existence. No quanta, no hadron, lepton, no quarks, no fluctuations, nothing, no energy, no matter. Absolutely nothing. That's what I mean by non-existence. In the absence of all of that, it cannot then pop into existence by itself because it was nothing. There's nothing to come from. Now I would like you to use your intellect and tell me why you find it very amusing.
I just want to say that we shouldn't be closing our options at this moment, surely, due to the extent of our knowledge, worldly knowledge, scientific knowledge, religious knowledge, spiritual knowledge. There are only a few options as of now, but maybe in the future there may be more due to discoveries. So,
problem with the approach. Maybe I'm not speaking to you right now. Maybe you don't exist.
Yeah.
Why do you think I exist?
I can see you.
No, there are other options. That's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's a grand illusion that you are speaking in Speaker's Corner. Millions and zillions of possibilities exist. Why do you only think I exist here and I don't? I am not in existence, maybe. So can you be certain that actually? So no, the proof doesn't come in because we're talking about logical possibilities. You're saying our current understanding is this is what we know, but maybe there are others we will know future. In the future, maybe you know that there are other options that I didn't even exist. You were a brain in a jar having that discussion here. But you are actually in what? St. Charles Hospital in a brain in a jar.
The reason I'm emphasizing on this option, one option, two option, or many options, is because if you look in the past, people thought it has to be this or that. But then over time they realized, okay,
give me an example.
Both of them were probably
give an example.
Give
an example.
Probably quantum mechanics, you know, the electron could be in two places at once. I mean, that is quite amazing. Probably 50 or 100 years ago, people never conceived of two
It's a baby science still, right?
It is baby science,
yeah.
Yes.
It's a baby science, and the way things are described is actually sometimes quite silly. Like, oh, things pop into existence. If you have no existence to begin with, you can't pop into existence. So that language they're describing is something very childish, isn't it? A scientist cannot use a language saying, oh, it was non-existent, but it pops into existence. Silly. I can say that, you know why? Because I am not afraid to talk to a scientist when they're speaking nonsense. If you have no existence of any kind, you can't pop into existence.
I mean, surely
particles pop into existence.
It could be
from where? From what? From nothing?
It could be in the nature of the particle themselves to exist and non-exist.
Wait. Let's understand one thing. If something is non-existent, can it even pop into existence? Because it's nothing to begin with. It's nothing. Unless you believe, like very deceitful approach by Professor Lawrence Krauss, the universe came from nothing. Have you read his books?
No, I haven't read his books.
Right, but that's the prophet of the scientific era today. He wants to deceive people by saying the universe came from nothing. When you go to his lectures, read his books, he says, actually, it's not nothing, it's something. So he doesn't say the universe came from nothing, it actually comes from something. So that's the deception, that's the trick. So if something is non-existent, it can't pop into existence because it's non-existent. Do you follow?
I follow that.
Right. So our universe, when I said it has either existed eternally in some form or another, or at one point it didn't exist. You think, maybe like quantum mechanics where electrons or particles or things exist in two different places. And look, here you don't have any choice. We took just the example of question of existence of God. It's a binary question. God exists, God doesn't exist. There's no in between maybe. I don't know. Who cares? That's not even an option. Answers are God exists or God doesn't exist. These are the only two binary options. So you have to be really intellectually robust in your dealing. From what I see, you need to be, look, maybe you haven't been, but you need to be. So now let's go to these options. If the universe at one point wasn't in existence at all, it will never become existent. It will be totally nothing. Our universe will never be. The fact that it is here, it means that option that is non-existent at one point is not valid. From nothing, you get nothing. If you was nothing, you will always be nothing. Nothing is not unstable, like Professor Lawrence Krauss says, because his nothing is something. So don't be deceived by, again, this kind of, philosophical trick by a scientist. He doesn't even understand what he's talking about, is he? With all respect to an eminent scientist of today, right? But I think it's just gibberish he's talking about. If you are nothing, no energy, no quanta, no fluctuation, no particles, nothing, this will always be like this. It's not going to suddenly say, I'm unstable, I'm going to become no energy, I'm going to borrow -1 energy, and then, so the total energy of the universe is 0. Negative concept of energy, where are you borrowing it from? There is nothing else. There is nothing else to borrow from. If you are nothing, you can't borrow from anything else because you are not existent in the first place, let alone being a sentient, thinking, choosing thing that says, I'm going to take some energy from somewhere, or let me have my rules that I need to do something, I need to be unstable. Where does this rule come from? The rule doesn't even exist because it's nothing, non-existent. The fact that the universe is here, my friend, there is only one option remaining. The universe, or whatever made that universe, whatever originated the universe, there has to be something always there, always. You have no escape that from intellectual reasoning. It has to be always there. The moment you say there was nothing, nothing would have resulted. Universe exists now, you and I exist, there has to be always something. The question is, what is that something?
Yes.
Yeah? It cannot be this universe because your scientists and my scientists, because they're the same scientists, are saying the universe began in some way. It expanded with about a few billion years ago, 13.7 billion years ago roughly. But before that, I can use before. Do you know why? Because if that was something, and we're saying time, place, everything existed, I'm going to use it very loosely. Was it always like this, or there was absolute nothingness? If it was absolute nothingness, it's not going to originate with an inflatory theories 13.7 billion years ago. It can't. So that means what? There was something there. Either it was the originator of the universe, or it came from another multiverse, whatever, right? So you have all these options, but eventually you will have to admit intellectually there was something always there. What are the characteristics of this something that was always there without a beginning? Now you realize we're coming to the concepts of a creator. Something always exists, it's an eternal, with no beginning. Possesses energy, because without energy nothing would have happened. If it always exists, possesses energy, did this just happen, or was a conscious choice? Was there a will involved? Was there consciousness involved?
It could have been a cause and effect. If you imagine the multiverse,
the multiverse suffers the same problem. All these bubbles, okay? What's the original point of origination? What is the cause of their existence?
You treat the multiverse as the thing which has always existed.
Okay, good.
Much like God.
Good. So this multiverse always existed, much like God. So it possessed certain characteristics. Did it consciously originate or unconsciously?
The nature of the multiverse. So just
is there any evidence for multiverse?
There's no evidence.
There's no evidence. Exactly.
But it's an idea, and it seems to explain things.
Do you know why it's an idea?
Much like God, it's an idea.
It's an idea to compete against the God idea, right?
Yes.
Because the other options are, look, we've already now restricted ourselves to a few options. The universe always existed, or the creator of the universe always existed. If you say there's a creator, you have a big problem. Science cannot believe in a creator because they're very dogmatic. A scientist, by their dogmatism, cannot believe in a creator. Otherwise, you won't get your journals, articles peer-reviewed and say, what? You're a creationist. That's the dogma that we see, right? You have to hide your beliefs in some way or not involve any of your belief system and just only talk about, the earthworms, how they, make the land fertile, whatever. Whereas there's no connection. The moment you start talking about there seems to be a hand of God, there seems to be a working of God involved, retract. This is what happened recently. Retract. They had to retract it and apologize. Oh, +1. It wasn't +1. +1. Apologize. The editor saying, that's it. We retracted it. This is what we talk about, dogmatism, scientific dogmatism. But I am not a dogmatist, scientist. I'm not a scientist, maybe a student of science. But when we realize about this universe, the multiverses, collectively as a whole, still they only matter. Matter, where did the rules come within the matter to do things the way they do? It didn't just happen. Do things happen? When we have a need to have a coffee or a meal, you just don't sit there and then your meal just happens in your kitchen by itself, by matter. Interactions of all the chemicals of water, milk, sugar, tea, plastic cup or a porcelain cup, and the cooker and the lighter, or the rice, whatever you eat, the vegetables and the knife to cut them into pieces. You just sit there and it doesn't happen because matter is not conscious and sentient. So it doesn't organize for you things which you think will be nicely organized in a nice meal, cup of coffee or tea. It doesn't happen. But you give that to the universe, to the multiverse, that this is what it's done. Wonderful people not even questioning it. We are here, arguing, questioning, discussing that this universe has a creator or not. And you think this all just happened, by itself.
I mean, there is the obvious temptation to say that there was an intelligent creator who has created us, but
it's not a temptation. It's the logical conclusion.
It's not the
only alternative you have.
Because if you think about it, back in the times, probably 300, 400 years ago, people really didn't know how a lot of these natural things happen. So they said, God must have created it, or God must be doing this. But as science progressed, they had substituted God for a natural explanation. So that's what I'm saying, is that science has been covering grounds. There has been pushing God to that one square, which is
that's not true.
Where did we all...
That is not true. That is a dogmatism again. Poor chap who passed away, one of the world's famous scientists. You know what I'm talking about? Stephen Hawking. A brilliant mind. God endowed him with so much intelligence. What was he trying to do in all his works? Constantly modifying his equations. You know why? Like everyone else. But some people, they stop. Roger Penrose and various others, they stop it. They realize it looks like there's a creator at the end of my equation. But others, they kept on fighting with the equation, which gives them, at the end, there has to be an intelligent creator. But they don't accept it, because why? Their whole life they spent to disbelieve in a creator. So anything that gives them scientifically, look at, the molecular biology. What happens in your body and you think, this thing called chance and a rule that happened within this nature which has no brains, no synapses, this nature, not a sentient conscious being, and yet somehow is making a one-way progress called evolutionary, something that goes from simple to complex and more intelligent, more precise and more... This is nothing. It's not something that's designing it, and yet we're giving all of that. Imagine what we're saying. Oh, you know what? These very few moments when the amino acids come together, they somehow found themselves attracted to connect to each other in a certain form, and not only that, in a three-dimensional form to make proteins, well, peptides before, and then polypeptides, and then proteins, and then to make the proteins you need the machinery in your cells. You need the mRNA, right? Ribosomes. But to make ribosomes you need the DNA. To make DNA you need ribosomes. Chicken or the egg, which one? We give so much these fantastic theories without actually saying, look, this kind of irreducible complexity, as some of the Christian creationists have put through, right? Irreducible, that's a term now, it's well known in creationist and scientific debates. Irreducible complexity, which so much, it's something that is so complex, and you can't just have it. It's like either or. The flagella of a bacteria, whatever. This machinery is so precise. We are saying it is possible by chance. It is possible that you become a potato, 200 years later by chance, by reorganization of your molecules. That's fairy tale, if you ask me. That's fairy tale. So the first life, the way it formed, the way it is described in abiogenesis and the theories, that's why no wonder Richard Dawkins, does he believe life is terrestrial or extraterrestrial? One of his opinion? Extraterrestrial. Extra. Coming from outside. There are people who have some of the opinions like this. Why? You can't actually explain the life that we have in this earth with this kind of mechanism. So when we talk about the whole universe, whether including the multiverse or not, why just focus on evolution, a particular model? There's so many other models of how life can progress, right? This doesn't solve the question about how order and complexity came into our universe. Because if you believe order and complexity come by chance, organization by chance, why even bother working, not 9 to 5, but 9 to 9, 24 hours a day in our lab, trying to make, more science, trying to work out the next generation of, computers and chips. Why? Because things don't just happen by chance. If it did, like nature, why is it only one time? Oh, it's a miracle. Oh, you believe in miracles then? Life originated by a miracle in a primordial soup? Scientists believe in a miracle? But scientists are not supposed to believe in a miracle. So that miraculous explanation doesn't work. If life can happen with a condition which was not set by any lab, by certain conditions, you can mimic these conditions in infinite forms today in our labs. Temperature variations, light, different kind of, whether you put photons or radons or any other, X-rays, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to beam at, right? So you can control matter, you can control plastic, silicon. You can have by computer method, simulation method, do all of these things, and which you're bound to get something that just spark of life again and again and again and then again, and they repeat it in the labs. There you go, we've discovered it. But why is it that we're still unable to? We can't even make proteins. All we can do is clone Dolly the sheep or whatever, right? Existing material, the program is there, just copy it, and it follows the program, copy, and it just clones it. Or stem cells. You have the cells, it's programmed already. From stem cell, pluripotent stem cells, you get what? You want to get a myeloid line or a leukoid line, then eventually you get, white cells or platelets or neutrophils, whatever. But it's already programmed. Do you see the problem? Have you gone to the level of questioning like this? If you haven't, this is the time to go ahead. I'm not giving you any evidence, I'm only asking you to reflect. Take this as a harsh push by someone in Speaker's Corner to question dogmatism. Because you've questioned dogmatism from religion. You've already done that. Question the dogmatism from science. Because science have already, we know from history, have deceived us by the eminent scientists of their day. They said, you know what, look at the horse evolution. Equihippus, Euhippus. We know it's a forgery. It never exists on a fossil record like that. But it was in our biology textbooks, even in my country, in the Pak subcontinent, in my country, in a university level textbook. They even showed the diagram. Blatantly false. But this was the science. Giraffe's neck, lamarckism, We know that's not true, but they believed in this. Not only this, when they invented the first microscope by Van Leeuwenhoek, 1673, they said we see the human being like this in a sperm, and it just gets bigger and bigger. Utter lies. The way they made all this, how human beings develop, it goes through these stages, they falsified it. You need to read some of the books where scientists of their day, how they falsified information for a theological belief system. Because remember, they're competing against what? Other theories. Maybe a theory of religion, God. So if you want to compete against that, you have to have something. When you have no evidence for it, you make one up yourself. There are loads of them in scientific history where they made up. Okay? Now we're saying, I'm sorry, we are sorry that we did this, but we have learned better. So, go and study those things and ask yourself these questions. It doesn't make sense to believe in things which are so organized, so complex, so in harmony and precision. To how many decimal places? All these constants? Too many. That's how precise they are. Just happened.
This is what we see. That's why we think this is in harmony. Surely, if things were in a different order, we would also think that is also in harmony.
Have you seen a different order?
No, I haven't. But
that's the problem.
Logically speaking, if I were to exist in a different universe,
but there is no different universe. You have to mean there.
But just take it for an example. If I were to exist in a different universe, in a very different form, suppose I would exist in a liquid form, I would think that the order of the universe in that universe is slightly different.
Yeah, but if you were sentient then, that particular order would have given rise to your living form. Again, very precise.
Yes, very precise. Exactly.
No, my point still it stands. Very precise. It's not just like...
That's what I'm saying. It's very much subject to the universe. It's not subject to...
The final product seems to be an outcome of precision. Whether you're precise into like a wobble,
yes,
but still there are precise laws that regulated you to become this wobble.
Which means that you could have different ways things are ordered depending on different universes. We think everything is on order here because of the way this universe is.
But I'm not talking about these teleological arguments or anthropic principles where they're talking. I'm simply saying, look at the precision and order within our human society. This is what Allah says in the Quran. Yeah? Look into your own self. Look into the horizons. Look into the creation of a camel. Look into the mountains. Look into all of this. Why? So that we can reflect. When we look into our own self, our makeup, look, A-level biology in the universities, even after that when we're studying and doing research, what do we find? It's not just on a macro level, we're in a micro level, the interaction that happens on a molecular level. That's why we're able to design and rationalize drugs that works in a certain pathway. Yeah? Sonic hedgehog pathway, or KRAS pathway. We're talking about in the cellular level, within, deep inside the cells, because we know how precise these things are operating. And yet we don't say it's a miracle because we say, now we're able to describe it. Just because we have described it, it doesn't mean it can just happen by itself. If I describe this video camera to you, to the point where I'm describing to you, even to the material that is used, and the mathematics and the physics that's gone through, it doesn't mean that thing actually came by itself. I'm just describing this thing as the way it is designed. Yourself, if I were to describe to you as a geneticist, as a molecular biologist, as a physicist, if I were to describe to you in every way that I'm describing in all the levels, I'm just describing a design in your system. It doesn't mean that system that you have just came by mutations and adaptations and evolution. Do you follow?
Yes,
I don't think you do, because you perhaps your belief. Do you believe in evolution?
Sorry?
Do you believe in evolution?
There is evidence.
Yeah. So of course, the people that we've spoken to, when they reject the evidence of a creator, they seek refuge or comfort in evolution, because that's the other alternative to explain all of this. Whether you like it or not, you have no other choice but to say, seems like there are some evidence for it. Yeah?
Anyways, it was nice talking to you. Sorry for taking too much.
No. Sorry for being harsh to you to make you think. So I'm asking you simply, just think. I'm not here to sort of suddenly give you all the evidence, because you have to find the evidence yourself and convince yourself, like everyone else is doing. Then when you have the evidence to you, that you know that yes, I can make my own conclusion about the data that I see and make inference from it.
What's your name?
Mansoor.
Mansoor, Shaz.
Shaz.
Nice to meet you.